Welcome to HOA Outplayed. Keep your phone ready for this one. The level was still on the top rail when Karen yelled that she was measuring, and she loved when people failed in real time. "I will not be ignored," she said, her voice cutting across my front yard like a siren. The fence panel was on the ground, one post still wet from the dirt I had just packed around it. She had a laminated policy sheet in one hand and her phone in the other, already taking photos. I work IT support from home, and this was the third time this week she had shown up during a meeting. My escrow closing was 6 days out. Any lien threat could blow the whole sale. She stepped closer, her key ring jingling like it was authority. "That is not an approved repair," she said. "You need design review approval before you touch anything structural." I looked up at her. "It is storm damage," I said. "The panel came down 2 nights ago. I am replacing it with the same style." She shook her head. "Repairs require approval too. You should have submitted plans. I have all day, and so does my fine meter." I stood up, mud on my knees. "The fence is identical," I said. "Same height, same posts, same spacing." She held up the laminated sheet. "It does not matter. The covenant says any exterior modification. That includes repairs." I could see a neighbor peeking through blinds across the street like it was a show. She saw me looking and smiled. "Keep arguing," she said. "You are making my case for me." I grabbed my phone and opened the HOA covenant PDF. "Show me the section," I said. She tilted her head. "I do not have to show you anything. I am the treasurer. I know the rules." That is when I realized she was not here to help. She was here to stack violations. She turned and walked toward the string line I had run between the corner posts to check alignment. She yanked the caution tape I had hung across the yard to keep the dog out of the work zone and draped it over the fence like it was crime scene evidence. "This whole area is non-compliant," she said. "You have materials stored in the setback. You have an unapproved structure. You have dirt piled outside the property line." I looked at the dirt. It was 6 inches from the fence, well inside my lot. "That is my yard," I said. She shook her head. "Not according to the survey I have." I did not stop her, because I wanted her on record. That night I got an email from the Beacon Hill Design Review Association. Subject line: "Violation notice and immediate compliance required." It listed 3 separate charges: unauthorized structural modification, improper material storage, encroachment into common setback. Each carried a $50 daily fine starting tomorrow. The email said I had 72 hours to submit a remediation plan or the fines would double. I called my real estate attorney. She said any unresolved HOA dispute could trigger a delay or kill the sale outright if the buyer found out. I asked if the HOA could actually enforce this. She said yes, if the covenant was written broadly enough. She told me to get a copy of the meeting minutes and any enforcement records for the past year. I hung up and started digging. The Beacon Hill Design Review Association runs on a compliance chair who carries a ruler and a stopwatch. Laura Davis is the treasurer, but she acts like she owns enforcement too. I found 3 other homeowners in the neighborhood Facebook group who had been hit with fence violations in the past 6 months. One guy said Laura showed up with a tape measure and cited him for being 2 inches over the height limit. Another said she forced him to repaint his gate because the stain was 1 shade too dark. A third said Laura filed a lien threat when he refused to pay a fine for parking his truck on the street overnight. All of them paid. None of them fought it. That was the pattern. Laura uses vague safety language so neighbors assume guilt without reading anything. She shows up, she measures, she threatens, and people fold. I pulled the HOA covenant and read every word. Section 12.4. Any modification to exterior structures requires Design Review Committee approval prior to commencement of work. Section 12.7. Emergency repairs for safety or habitability may proceed immediately with notification within 48 hours. I had texted the HOA manager the night the fence came down. I had photos timestamped from the storm. I was covered. But Laura did not care about Section 12.7. She was running her own interpretation. I texted my ally, a local journalist contact who had covered HOA abuse stories before. She told me to document everything, get witnesses, and attend the next board meeting. She said most HOA boards fall apart when someone shows up with a voice recorder and asks for the enforcement policy in writing. The next morning, a vendor showed up at my door. He said he was from the HOA management company and he needed to verify fence compliance. I asked for his credentials. He handed me a business card with no company name, just a phone number. I took a photo of it and told him I was not letting him on my property without written authorization from the board. He said Laura sent him. I said Laura does not have unilateral authority to send contractors onto my lot. He shrugged and left. I called the HOA manager and asked if she had authorized a site visit. She said no. She said Laura had been sending vendors to properties without board approval for months. She said she had complained to the board president, but nothing changed. That was when I realized Laura was operating outside the rules entirely. I filed a formal complaint with the board. I attached the time-stamped photos, the text to the HOA manager, the covenant sections, and the vendor business card. I requested a hearing. 2 days later, I got a notice in the mail. Compliance hearing scheduled for Thursday at 7 p.m. Location, clubhouse. Attendance mandatory. Failure to appear will result in automatic fine enforcement. I showed up 15 minutes early. The room was empty except for Laura. She was sitting at the head table with her key ring in front of her and a stack of papers. I sat down in the front row. She did not look up. At 7 p.m., no one else had arrived. I asked where the rest of the board was. She said this was an administrative hearing, not a full board meeting. I said the bylaws require at least 3 board members for any enforcement decision. She said I could leave if I did not like the format. I pulled out my phone and hit record. Laura saw it and stood up. "You cannot record this," she said. I said the bylaws do not prohibit recording. She said it was a privacy issue. I said this was an official HOA proceeding and I had the right to document it. She said if I did not turn it off, the hearing was over. I kept recording. She walked out. 10 minutes later, I got an email from her personal account. Subject line: hearing canceled due to non-compliance. Body: your refusal to follow basic meeting decorum has resulted in forfeiture of your hearing rights. Fines will proceed as scheduled. Contact the board if you wish to appeal. I forwarded it to my attorney. She said it was the dumbest thing she had ever seen an HOA officer do. She said we could use it as evidence of retaliation and procedural abuse. She drafted a response letter demanding the board hold a proper hearing with a quorum and allow recording per state open meeting laws. The next day, I got a call from a contractor I had hired to finish the fence work. He said someone from the HOA told him to stop work, or he would be reported to the city for unpermitted construction. I asked who called him. He said a woman named Laura. I told him to ignore her and finish the job. He said he could not risk it. He said he had other projects in the neighborhood and he did not want to get blacklisted. He refunded my deposit and walked. That was Laura's second escalation step. First, she sent the fake inspector to provoke me. Now she was scaring off my contractors. I called 2 other fence companies. Both said they had heard about compliance issues in Beacon Hill and they did not want to take the job. I was stuck. My fence was half done. My closing was 4 days out. My job was falling apart because I was spending 8 hours a day fighting this instead of working. I had missed 2 client calls and my boss had sent a warning email. I went back to the HOA records. I pulled every meeting minute from the past 2 years. I found something in the August meeting notes. Laura Davis was cited for being 60 days past due on her HOA dues. The board voted to suspend her voting rights until she paid. She paid 3 days later, but the suspension note was still in the record. I kept digging. In October, the board had discussed a motion to remove her from the treasurer position due to incomplete financial reports. The motion failed, but the discussion was recorded. In December, another homeowner filed a complaint against Laura for harassment. The board tabled it. I printed everything. That was my trump card. Laura was not in good standing. She had been cited, suspended, and complained about, and she was using her position to target people who challenged her. I called my journalist ally. She told me the trump card was solid, but I needed to deploy it publicly so the board could not bury it. She suggested I attend the next full board meeting and play it on speaker so neighbors could hear it in real time. She said if I did it right, the board would have to act or risk a lawsuit. I checked the HOA calendar. The next meeting was Tuesday. My closing was Wednesday. I had 1 shot. I emailed the board president and requested to be added to the agenda under homeowner concerns. She approved it. I spent the weekend preparing. I had the meeting audio where Laura admitted she was targeting me because I questioned her authority. I had the compliance records showing selective enforcement. I had the vendor intimidation evidence. I had the fake hearing email. And I had the trump card. Monday afternoon, Laura showed up at my house with an inspection crew, 3 guys in reflective vests, a clipboard, and a camera. She said the HOA was exercising its right to verify property compliance under Section 19 of the covenant. I asked for the work order in writing. She said she did not need one. I said Section 19 requires written notice and board authorization. She said I was stalling. I said I was enforcing the rules she claimed to care about. She turned to the crew. "Start at the fence line," she said. I stepped in front of them. "You do not have authorization," I said. "If you enter my property without a written work order, I will call the police for trespassing." One of the crew guys looked at Laura. She said it was fine. He shook his head. He said he was not risking a trespassing charge over a fence inspection. The crew left. Laura stayed. She stood on the sidewalk with her keyring jingling. "You think you are clever," she said. "You think you can fight this. I have all day, and so does my fine meter." I looked at her. "Tomorrow night at the board meeting," I said. "Be there." I walked inside. Tuesday night the clubhouse was packed. I counted 14 homeowners in the audience. The board sat at the front table. Laura was on the far right, her keyring on the table in front of her. The president called the meeting to order. She went through the usual reports. Budget update, landscaping contract renewal, pool maintenance schedule. Then she called homeowner concerns. I stood up. I said my name and my address. I said I was here to address systematic harassment and selective enforcement by the treasurer. Laura leaned forward. "That is not on the agenda," she said. The president said I had requested time and she had approved it. Laura sat back. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the portable speaker I had brought. I played the audio from the fake hearing. Laura's voice came through clear. "You cannot record this. Your refusal to follow basic meeting decorum has resulted in forfeiture of your hearing rights." The room was silent. I played the contractor intimidation call. Then I played the vendor call. Then I read the email where Laura canceled the hearing and said fines would proceed. If you are enjoying this HOA nightmare, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories of standing up to corrupt boards. Then I pulled out the printed meeting minutes. I read the August suspension. I read the October removal discussion. I read the December harassment complaint. I held up the certified copy of the HOA records showing Laura was cited and suspended. I said, "Keep arguing. You are making my case for me." Her own words. The president looked at Laura. "Is this accurate?" she asked. Laura said it was taken out of context. I said context did not matter. The records were public. Laura had been suspended for non-payment. She had been cited for incomplete reports. She had been complained about for harassment. And she was using her position to retaliate against anyone who questioned her. A homeowner in the back row stood up. He said Laura had done the same thing to him last year. Another homeowner said Laura had threatened to fine him for a mailbox issue that was not even in the covenant. A third said Laura had sent a vendor to his house without authorization. The room erupted. The president called for order. She said the board would take the matter under advisement. I said that was not good enough. I said I wanted the fence violation retracted in writing, and I wanted a refund of any fines assessed. I said if the board did not act tonight, I would file a complaint with the state HOA ombudsman and copy every homeowner in the neighborhood. The president looked at the other board members. They nodded. She said the board would vote on an emergency motion. She read the motion. Move to retract the fence violation issued to the homeowner, refund all fines, and suspend Laura Davis from enforcement duties pending a full investigation. The vote was 4-1. Laura voted no. The motion passed. The president said Laura's complaint was ruled unfounded with evidence cited. Laura stood up. She said this was illegal. She said the board did not have authority to suspend her. The president said the bylaws allowed the board to suspend any officer for cause. Laura grabbed her keyring and walked out. The president turned to me. She said the board would issue a written retraction within 48 hours. She apologized for the harassment. She said the board would review all enforcement actions Laura had taken in the past year and refund any improper fines. She said the board would vote on Laura's removal at the next meeting. I said thank you. I walked out. My phone was blowing up. 3 neighbors texted me asking for copies of the records. My journalist ally called and said she wanted to write the story. My attorney emailed and said the retraction letter arrived and it was airtight. My closing went through on Wednesday with no issues. The buyer never knew. 2 weeks later, the board held an emergency meeting. Laura was removed from the board in an emergency meeting, and the bogus fence fines were automatically refunded to everyone hit in the enforcement wave. 7 homeowners got checks. The total was $4,000. The board hired a new management company and rewrote the enforcement policy to require written notice, board authorization, and a right to appeal with representation. Laura moved out of the neighborhood 3 months later. I heard she tried to run for the board in her new community and got voted down. The fence is still standing. Same height, same posts, same spacing. No violations, no fines, no harassment. I finished the work myself. I bought a tape measure and checked every measurement twice. Perfect. The funny karma moment came a month later. I got an email from the new HOA manager. She said the board had completed the audit of Laura's financial records. Turned out Laura had been using HOA funds to pay for personal expenses. Small amounts, but consistent. Office supplies, mileage reimbursements, vendor payments that were never verified. The board filed a complaint with the state. Laura had to repay $6,000 and resign from any HOA position in the state for 5 years. The insurer email came through 2 days later. The HOA's liability carrier told the board to stop all enforcement actions that were not documented and board approved, or they would cancel the policy. Laura's enforcement wave had nearly cost the HOA its insurance. The board sent a letter to every homeowner apologizing and outlining the new compliance process. No more surprise inspections, no more vendor intimidation, no more Laura. I still see neighbors from that night. They thank me. They say I did what they were too scared to do. I tell them it was not courage, it was documentation. I kept every email, every text, every photo, every recording. I built a case that could not be ignored. That is the lesson. HOA boards operate in the shadows because no one pushes back. The second you shine a light, they fold. Laura thought she had all the power because she had a laminated policy sheet and a key ring full of keys. But power is just performance until someone calls your bluff. I called it. She lost. A lawyer letter that forces a retraction and a refund is the most satisfying thing you can send to someone who thought they were untouchable. Laura learned that the hard way. I hope your day stays calm.